Well, hello, friends. We've got another great episode ready for you to digest. The event production industry is caught in a bit of a pricing trap. Many service providers of AV, lighting, scenic design have evolved from being AV rental houses to becoming AV production houses, yet still some of the pricing projects are based on rental rates rather than on expertise, creativity, strategy, design, all that good stuff. So what happens is with that, the result is a race to the bottom, lowering margins and ultimately poor service. How can we break the cycle and redefine value in event production? That is the topic of our conversation today. So stay with us as we unpack this industry's crisis with an expert who has been reshaping the business of technical event production for many years.
Welcome to the Events Demystified podcast, where we demystify the world of in-person, virtual, and hybrid events, AV production, and AI technology by sharing practical tips, tricks, and strategies to help your event succeed. This podcast is brought to you by Treefan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency that caters to event professionals, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. We specialize in AV and AI education, integration, automation, and implementation, all based on our Fit for Events framework, which focuses on futuristic AV production, innovative AI technology, thriving audiences, and empowering behind-the-scenes teams. And your host, Anka Platon Treefan, with over 2 decades of hands-on experience in event production, event management, and now AI technologies and cybersecurity.
Welcome back to another episode of the EventsDemystified podcast. I'm your host, Anka Platon Treefan, and today we are taking on a very different type of topic. We are getting into the business side of AV event production. For that topic, I have joining me Tom Stimson, president of Stimson Group LLC, a leading expert in the business of technical event production. Tom has spent decades advising AV and production companies on how to move beyond outdated pricing models, improving profitability, and staying ahead of industry shifts. He's delivered keynote presentations on 6 different continents and has worked with companies globally to redefine value in event production. And here's a fun fact that Tom started in theater, but quickly realized that the corporate event world pays way better. I think we all have realized that eventually, Tom. So with that, I would love to welcome our guest to the show. Welcome to the show, Tom. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I am so glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad that we made the time to find in this busy schedule that we both are running, especially during the busy season of events, right? I mean, when is it not the busy season of events? That's what I'm trying to figure out these days.
That is a big topic.
Well, before we get into the state of the industry, asking all those questions, trying to get to the bottom of some of the challenges that a lot of AV production companies are facing, I have to ask, because going back to school for an MBA while working full time before turning to business consulting sounds like so much fun. What was really the biggest lesson from that experience that you still apply today?
The biggest lesson, I was 40 years old. I went back to school, spent 2 years working full time and going to school. The biggest lesson is time management. You learn how much time you really have. And we had 2 children at home. So you find out how much time there really is in a week and how you can prioritize when you do work. And you also find out when you do your best work for certain kinds of work.
It's like you're telling my story. I get it.
Yeah, there are times of the day when I don't need to be trying to read and understand text. And there's times of the day when I need to be writing, and there's times of the day when I need to be thinking and strategizing. And you just have to slot that work into the best time for you to do that as much as you can. And to be honest with you, the hard part was not getting through school. The hard part was figuring out what to do with all that found time when I finished
When you were
school.
done.
When I was done, and all of a sudden I had 30 hours of my week back, and I didn't. That was tough.
I think that's when you start businesses, right? That's when you start looking, okay, this works, this doesn't. Let's get into that.
Well, I did something else, but that's another story.
Okay, I can get to wait for that. So here's something that I wanted to jump into, because obviously, as I premised a little earlier, there's a challenge that we face today. So I would like to first set the stage, right? As we talked a little bit prior to this conversation, and you're telling me how there's so many companies, and I have faced that myself working in AV production for 20 something years. And a lot of those AV companies have started as AV rental houses. I know plenty of owners of those AV rental houses that have then turned it into a production house. And the business model at first would have been leasing out equipment. How much equipment can you get out of your warehouse and then back in, QC it, and then out again, right? And over time, as they've expanded into larger events, full production services, then you are being asked about other things like, hey, can you provide some creative, strategic, technical expertise aside from the gear? And honestly, I love that part of AV production. It wasn't just delivering the gear. It was like, let's talk about this event. How can we make it better, right? But the challenge is, instead of like charging for that knowledge and time and creativity and high value that comes from expertise, right, from years of experience, many of those AV companies, they still rely on charging those rental rates, which many times fail to reflect the true value of their services, but also makes so much harder for true production houses to charge their worth, right?
Well,
So that being said, since most AV providers seem to be stuck in this rental-based pricing model, would you start by breaking down to our audience of event professionals that might not realize that there's a challenge? Like when they look at the RFP and the big bill, they don't see the full story, right? They just see like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of money. So as to why is this becoming a problem? Why was this a problem from the beginning? And then we can get to a solution.
Well, thank you. I think a brief history lesson is appropriate here, because if you look how the audiovisual event model started, we started off as small rental companies, and schools could rent film projectors and slide projectors from your local AV company. And sometimes they were busy and they said, well, can you come out and set it up for us? Now, here's the truth. 30 years ago, we made so much money renting equipment that we were happy to go set it up for free as long as you rented it from us. But as technology became more complex, as we moved into the video world and then eventually into the digital world, okay, what it cost to put on a proper show became very expensive. And the model of, here's some rental equipment, oh, let me add some labor on there for you, and we're going to add up all the parts and pieces and present you with a budget. Well, that's great if you understand what all the equipment is and how much you need, but it's not great if you need a consultative vendor who can help listen to what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, the feelings and the creativity you're trying to get across. How do they put together a budget? So they take that old rental model and they add up all the equipment and they guess how much labor and how many hours it's going to take. And we'd like to sprinkle a little magic dust on it, but we just give the magic away for free because we're that good. Now you're competing with people who didn't put any magic dust on it. And that's when your business model starts to fall apart. If we're always comparing ourselves, your equipment list plus your labor list and maybe a few expenses, then you're not actually showing the value of what you're doing. And some of us are better than others. Some of us are more appropriate in certain situations than others. Some of us try and do too much when all we need is a little. So you as the buyer need to understand what it is you're looking for and find a company that has a solution at your budget. My old school rental pricing doesn't help me get there. My old school rental pricing tells me my equipment's really valuable and labor costs too much. So now how do we have a value conversation about your event?
Right. So I guess what I'm seeing more often than not is a lot of this time that we call pre-production time is not being invoiced, right? You're basically starting with this client. Let's just, for the sake of this hypothetical example, you're starting to engage with the client in the spring for an event that's going to happen sometimes in the fall. So it's February, you start the process of trying to get that RFP that was sent, signed, it's an invoice, it's booked, now we're good. And between now, say beginning of March and September, October, whenever this event is going to take place, it's important to keep communication going. I think the problem comes is when the client comes back with all these ideas and questions to run by you and needing your expertise and needing your support and needing to like, oh, we're changing this, now we're adding that, now we need to brainstorm a different solution, whatever the different reasons. That to me is time in the bank that you didn't account for in your initial proposal. So if you're stuck to that proposal and you're never going to add on this additional time spent on creativity, strategizing, brainstorming, then by the time the event is done, you're looking at your cost and realize that you're in a loss.
Right. You've described the classic over delivery. I rented you some equipment. I scheduled some labor. 2 weeks later, you call me and you make some changes. So I redo the list, redo the labor, hand it back to you. 2 weeks later, you called, make some changes. Okay. But when I have to help you realize your event and I'm putting my intellectual property, not just my rental items and my team on your show, when I'm putting my intellect on your show, that's what we're not capturing. So part of that, yes, of course, is the time that it takes to do that. But the other part is the value of that.
So how do we break this pattern? Like, how do we charge our value?
Well, again, is really who wants to break it. Now, if I ask the buy side, and you spend time on the buy side going, hey, how can we help your vendors get more value, charge you for more value? You're going to go, no, don't do that. I don't want them to charge me more.
Right.
Right. So now we have two parties in a transaction who are being dishonest with each other. One saying, I want you to do everything you can for me. I just don't want to pay you any extra for it. Right. Not that you would do that. And the other party's going, I really need this job and I'm going to do a little extra.
Yeah.
But there's a point in time where I'm not going to do what I need to do because you're not paying me enough.
Yeah.
Right? There's a point in time where what the right thing to do is no longer in the budget. And it's because we talked about the price before we talked about the outcome. So how do we break the cycle? It's a mindset shift. How do we break the cycle? We have to break it on the buy side and the sell side. And like you were saying earlier, why don't we sit down and have a conversation about what you're trying to do with this event?
But not only have a conversation, but trying to figure out then how are we going to monetize on that knowledge that's being shared, expertise that's being shared? Is there value? Like, how do you put a dollar sign to that?
Great question. Well, we call that a how long is a piece of string question. There's an infinite number of answers. But if you look at what your cost is for putting on the event, just the hard costs, I have to rent this equipment, I have to hire these people, I have to book this contractor, and those are my costs. Your profit is the margin you add to it. How much margin you can add to it is a factor of two things. I mean, one, it's always a factor of what is the client willing to pay you. Yeah. But two, it has to do with how much risk is involved for you as the provider to deliver that service. And if your risk is relatively low and your time constraints are not going to be huge, you can probably afford a lower margin.
Right.
But if the risk and responsibility is extremely high, you should make a higher margin.
So risk then has to be direct proportional to how many mouths you got to feed, how many people you got to pay that depend on you for that payroll, right?
It's beyond that because that's your cost. The risk is, the biggest risk we all face is I don't get paid. That's the biggest risk of all. Oh, somebody was unhappy. The centerpiece on the table got in the way of the camera shot and we didn't see the award presented. Now we don't want to pay you. That's risk. Now, never mind that the person who put the centerpiece on there should be shot.
Don't you think there's some strategies though to mitigate this risk in the way of, like, for example, it's common practice nowadays. I don't think it was so much in the past. Like, I know I operated myself without a deposit for many years until one time you get to that one client that you sort of need to beg to be paid years backwards for things that you provided service, like you provided value, and it's impossible, and nobody wants to be put in a position to be begging for what's the reward, like what we agreed this cost, right? So it only takes one time, I think, for you to get burned like that and say, you know what, from here on we're gonna have a deposit on signage. This is whatever, 50%, 75%, whatever, how much you want to make it. And then the rest is paid on the day of, not even post-event. Like, I want to see that check.
Because I put on workshops myself, I book venues and I do hire vendors. I don't have a single vendor who bills me after the event. There's not a hotel in the world that's going to wait until my event is over and then present me with a bill, unless it's more than what I've already given them.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody should be working for free and be your customer's bank.
Yeah.
You don't make enough money to be your customer's bank. So risk is, am I going to get paid? How long is it going to take me to get paid? Now, if I'm making 400% profit, take your time. Pay me when you're ready. But if I'm making 30% profit, I need that money now because I have to book jobs back to back to back to back, and I've got to pay people and I've got to pay suppliers.
Yeah.
I can't afford to wait for your money at those margins.
Yeah.
That's another form of risk. So
Absolutely.
When we're at the negotiating table, think about all the things you have to negotiate with. Okay. When you pay a vendor is a huge negotiating tool, but also limiting or mitigating their risk has a lot of value too.
So where does all this net 30s, net 60s, net 90s come from, like, as common business practice? Because a lot of AV production houses, they're very much like tied into some of those nets, right? And like you said, you don't go to a venue and tell them, oh yeah, wait for me to pay you net 60, because they're going to laugh in your face and never actually allow you to book any events there.
Right. So, I mean, these are corporate terms. Now, again, I'll go back to the history lesson. 40 years ago, when you were renting a video projector from me that I paid $2,000 for and I'm charging you $1,000 a week, I would give you net 30 terms if you were a citizen in my county. If I knew where you live, don't worry about it. We'll collect later. I am making so much money, I don't care.
I've seen invoices on napkins that people forgot about, and it was like, yeah, I know him. Yeah. He'll pay me.
Yeah. And I've certainly over the years worked with producers who use the money that they earned from this job to pay for the last job or the job before that. And so your job, if you're one of their suppliers, you're not going to get paid until the next 4 or 5 jobs down the road. And eventually that just doesn't work anymore. Yeah. But those terms that you're talking about, those are corporate buyers. If a Fortune 100 company calls you and says, hey, I would like your company to do our event and here's how we pay you, you should immediately add additional margin in there for being their bank and say, oh, by the way, if you'll pay me this way.
Like, I'm not giving you my money for free interest anymore, right?
Well, it's interest and it's the use of the money. And we were dealing with multi-billion-dollar corporations and we are small businesses. Small to medium enterprises shouldn't be financing Fortune 100 companies' bank accounts. Now, are they doing it because they need it to do? No, they're just doing it because it's policy.
Or that's how they run. Yeah, that's how they run their accounts. And they're not going to make an exception for this little guy over here when all their accounts are run like that.
Well, the secret is they make that exception all the time. You just need to know how to get the exception.
Got it. Well, tell us, please. We want to know.
First and foremost, you stated up front from the very beginning, from the first quote. These are our terms.
So do you feel like if you do that, and because, say, you didn't yet earn this is a brand new client, you didn't yet earn their trust, do you feel like you're putting yourself in the position to might not gain that business because you're putting all these terms up and conditions and you're being perceived as someone difficult to do business with?
I think you're dealing with somebody who knows exactly how to do business.
Mm.
And there's a difference. So appeasement, for some people, their selling style is appeasement. Oh, don't worry about that. No, we'll bill you whenever. That's appeasement. No, here's how we do business. We're very professional. We're going to have these meetings. We're going to do these things. We're going to make these deliverables for you. Here's how you're going to pay us. Here are the increments that we're going to be paid in. And
This
as
is
long as
our requirements.
these are our requirements. Well, we don't normally pay that way. Okay. Are you asking to pay me differently? Right? I'm sure you don't always pay that way. This is how I charge. So one, you have to understand what your value is. This goes back to the beginning of our conversation. Where is value created? This is the moment that is created. If you don't value yourself, your customers are never going to value you. So no, I don't do this for free. I don't do this waiting for money. Okay. I cannot finance your event. Okay. This is what I charge because I pay my people. I pay my folks on time. I pay my bills on time. Right. So creating expectations is important.
That's a hard pill to swallow, especially if you're in a position where you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to make it from this season to the next season, because we know how unpredictable sometimes it can be, where like this whole season you're booked and then you're looking into the future and you're like, well, yes, I have some recurring business, but I cannot tell for the life of me if it's gonna get busy or it's gonna get like slow. It's hard to predict, especially in today's times with, I feel like registration times are like just shortening. Event professionals don't know themselves where they are when it comes to their own events and who's coming to the event and who's paying for that event.
You just identified one of the key factors in value. We learned this as we came out of the pandemic in 2022. The most valuable thing you are for your buyer, if you're on the event production side, is available. I'm available. If you wait and talk to me again in 2 weeks, I might not be available any longer. And I was a freelancer for many years, right? I understand the feast and famine. Hey, we got through busy season. I better have some money tucked aside.
Right.
And it took me a few years, but then I've realized, hey, I know what my seasons are. And you know what? I take every July off.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't spend all the money that I earned in January and February. Right. And that's me being a good business person.
Yeah.
Right. So part of being a good business person is charging what it's worth. There's a point in time, I also hired a lot of freelancers and they want to negotiate rates and they go, oh, I'm really busy at that time. I want to charge you more. Or, hey, what am I doing? Am I directing cameras? I charge this. If I'm a camera operator, I charge that. I said, please don't do any of that to me. Tell me what your off the couch price is. What is it going to cost to get you off the couch to buy 100% of your brain for 2 days? I just want you for 2 days. What's that going to cost me? I don't care what you're going to do for me. You are worth that for 2 days. So value is the fact that they're available. If they're good, they are more valuable when they're available.
But the off the couch, is there some kind of like a standard term that?
No, it's not. I have lots of off the couches. What is it going to take to get you off the couch and come to work for me for a day? You know what everybody thinks freelancers are? We're all just sitting around in our underwear, watching soap operas on the couch.
Just waiting for the call.
Waiting for the call. It's like, well, it's not like you're doing anything. So the idea that the buyer, the hiring company, you need them more than they need you, devalues you. So when you need your customer more than they need you, you've already given up the value negotiation.
So how do you strike the balance with being able to provide that value, making yourself available, but also being very strict, I guess, with your boundaries as to like where your pricing, where your value is at, and not giving in?
Right. Well, one, you need to know what your boundaries are. And we know that our boundaries vary a little bit with customers. I have old friends that I did shows for 30 years ago. If they called me today and said, Tom, would you please come in and put on a headset? I just want to hear your voice. I'd be happy to go do that. I don't care what they want to pay me. I have
Right.
people who have reached out to me and says, Tom, we would like you to be a backstage manager at the Kennedy Center Awards. And I said, I'm a business consultant. I charge $7,500 a day. Oh, no, we don't want that. I said, well, okay. So you have to know what your boundaries are,
Yeah.
right? So I know what it's going to take to get me to work, and then I'm willing to negotiate depending on who I'm working with. Okay? But I don't want to negotiate. I don't want to have, if I have to make one phone call to get paid, that is not a good use of my time or my spirit.
Okay, so to wrap it up, let's dial in. What are some smarter ways to go about this whole process?
Well, let's talk about the event planner, event production company, the corporation that is putting on an event that wants to work with a creative or technical production company. Okay. And there's usually a conversation, but it starts lots of different ways. Sometimes sophisticated buyers have a request for proposal that they've developed and they send it out to companies and they expect them to respond. Okay. An RFP is an interface. It's basically saying, I hope I'm buying a commodity. I hope you're a commodity. And please give me more than this job is worth in your response. I'm hoping you will make a very costly mistake in my favor. Thank you. How soon can I have that back? Right?
Some of those are being sent literally the week before Christmas, expecting a response. Like the same way. It's like, are you kidding me?
Right. Yeah. It's like you want to buy a new car, go on the last day of the month and find the salesman who's walking around the parking lot. You're going to get your best deal. So yeah, there are buying processes that are disingenuous. Okay. And at the RFP process, it's necessary, it's functional, but it shouldn't be carved in stone. It's an opportunity to start a dialogue. Here's what our event looks like. Can we start talking about that event rather than, I would like to see 4 set designs and I want to see budgets and I want to see variations on this schedule and you're one of 12 bidders.
Right. And if you could make it within this format, so I can easily put it in my spreadsheet document and compare line to line to line, make it easy for me possibly to be able to decide which one is the cheapest option and offers the most value.
Yes. And my clients don't respond to those. The people that I work with, it's like, guys, that's the first thing you turn down.
Right.
You don't have enough time in your week. You could make 10 prospecting calls that are worth more than what you're going to get out of that job because you're not going to win it.
Yeah.
Why write a quote? Why design a show that you're not going to win? So let's start with the right conversation. Are you available? That'd be a great place to start. Show some respect, right? We have this event. Here are the dates. First of all, are you available? Right. Here's a little bit of what we're looking about. At least have you done your research on your supplier? Do you know that they are capable of doing the show? Or you were referred to us. We don't know anything about you. I'd like you to write a quote for this giant budget instead of saying, hey, would you mind giving me a capabilities pitch? I'd like to learn more about your company. So let's ask for the right things, have the right conversations, and not run straight to the numbers. Because there's only one number that matters.
Do you think there's some assumptions being made all the time, especially when it comes to like a general blanket for an EV production that like, I generally think they do this, this, and this, and this is like from say an event planner, meeting planner's point of view, and without necessarily always going to like, I don't remember, especially when I was running AV production, a meeting planner ever asking for a capabilities meeting. There's like this innate assumption, well, you do AV. I mean, you do AV, right? It's like, what else do you not do that is AV?
Well, apparently what we don't do is AV at the budget that you think it should be at because you don't understand how much better we are than other folks. So that capabilities pitch, not having it wasted 2 parties' time. You assume that 1, your needs are self-evident, and that 2, because you're an AV company, you can fulfill them. Okay. The AV company also made the mistake of assuming that they are selling what you're buying. And you guys haven't actually reconciled. What is it you're looking for? What are you buying? What's important to you? When is your event? What's your process for making a decision? What is your most important criteria? Well, our event's in 2 weeks. We need 10 days to decide, and we're going to hire the lowest bidder.
Right.
Click.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Next
very
time.
much. Thanks for playing. Right. So we've got to get through all of that. We just have to have those adult conversations so that we can get to the most important question, which is, do you have a budget? Okay. And would you like to work to that budget, or would you like to develop a new budget? Because the only number that matters is not what price I want to sell at, it's the price that they want to buy at. And then the third factor of that is, what is the actual scope of work? A customer who wants to spend $500,000 on an enormous scope of work is going to be very disappointed. Somebody else who has a $500,000 budget for a $500,000 scope of work is going to be very, very pleased. So you've got to reconcile some things, but I can't change the client's budget. And if I have to guess at what your budget is, why is that a good use of my time? Why am I on a game show?
Before we continue, I want to give a shout out to the team at TreeFan Events. We are not just an event planning and production agency. We are focused on integrating innovative AV solutions, AI strategies, and wellness-focused practices through our Fit for Events framework. Whether you're planning live, virtual, or hybrid events, the team at TreeFan Events is here to provide personalized planning, strategic design, and seamless technology management to ensure everything runs flawlessly. And now, we are offering AI-powered workshops to help you grow your business, build stronger teams, and elevate your events to the next level. If you want to learn more about how the team at TreeFan Events can help make your event unforgettable, visit treefanevents.com.
Okay, so let's talk about this budget number that you're given. You do ask the question, they give you a budget, and you come to find out that it's not really the real budget, because and I've heard this from event planners all the time. Well, if I give them the actual budget, they're going to run themselves up to the budget, and then I have no room for any additional or whatever last minute things, right? Versus, well, I'm going to shave like a percentage of that budget.
Yeah.
So, and then still ask for the same and see what they come up with, right?
Yeah. Let's just be dishonest about what our budget actually is and see how that helps your relationship. So why can't you just say, we have a $500,000 budget. I need a 10% contingency. So I would like you to build this event to $450,000. The contract will be for $500,000. We just don't know what the last 50 is for yet.
Right.
What a great way to start the conversation. You're going to spend $500,000. Great. Let me help you spend it wisely. I think a 10% holdback is a very wise move.
Yeah.
Much better way to start a conversation rather than, I don't want to tell you what my budget is, because then you're going to try and take advantage of me, which is the implication when you don't give a budget. It's like, I don't feel good about that.
Right.
I don't want to spend any more of your money than you want to spend. So what'd you guys spend last year? Let's start there. Do you want it to be better or less than that? What does that spend translate in per attendee or per increased sales, or what's the ROI for your event? Why are you spending that much money for that little return? Maybe you should be spending less. I can help you there too. So there's much better sales conversations we can have from the sales side. Okay. But we're going to have to educate our buyers unless somebody's over there educating them how to buy better. I can only work this side.
That is a very valid point. Now, one thing that was coming to my mind as we were talking about this pricing structures, the labor challenges, the freelancing, all of that going hand in hand, especially when margins are low, it's hard to invest in good people, right? So beyond fixing the pricing models, what can event buyers do to create better partnerships with their providers? And when we look at a labor shortage in the event industry, is it truly a labor shortage? Is there a talent shortage? And if so, is there a way to fix that?
I don't believe there's a talent shortage. I don't believe there's a labor shortage. Okay. What we had are some pricing problems. Okay. Freelance labor rates have not increased at the same pace as everything else in the industry. And I speak from 40 years of this. I charged $150 a day at one time. So I've seen this move. Now, the margins for the event production companies on labor have shrunk because they've raised their labor charges to their customers at a slower pace than their labor costs have gone up. But all of that has fallen behind the industry. And the pandemic was our reset. So once the pandemic hit and all of a sudden we were doing services and our pricing models didn't work, we found out that we were charging 2 and 3 times what we thought the show was worth, and the clients were still throwing the money at us. 2022 comes around. There's no availability. Everybody's rates, the worst freelancers, people who shouldn't be allowed to flip a hamburger on show site, wanted $1,000 a day as their off the couch price, and they don't have the skill sets. But that was just an indication of how far off labor rates were. So when there's a tight labor market, is the freelance AV professional, is their price point worth it to be in that business, or do they want to go get a job somewhere else? So if you're willing to pay what talent is worth, which means you have to be willing to sell what it's worth and make a margin. And if you can get out of that self-talk and that rental talk is, oh my goodness, I can't make my rates more than $1,000 a day because there's a comma in that price, then you're not understanding what your cost is. You're not understanding the value of the talent that you're bringing to the event, and you're not understanding what your risk and margin should be. You've talked yourself into a rental think paradigm from 20-year-old pricing. So there's not a shortage. We have to hire better people. We have to have higher standards.
How do we help those small business owners of AV production houses and companies that do struggle with that? And it's hard for them to change that mindset, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we support them in their growth to understand? Because I feel like, what's that saying? One tide raises all ships, right?
Right.
It's not just helping them, it's helping the industry as a whole, because then we can all charge our worth. Versus here's an outlier, and now we know that company is really expensive.
Yeah. I work with companies in all sizes and all markets, from major markets to very small towns, small companies with 2 and 3 employees and companies with 200 employees. The formula is really the same. You have to understand what people are worth. So if you're struggling with, oh, we make all of our money off of rental equipment because I have the old rental mindset model, and I'm going to add some labor on there, but I'm not going to make a lot of money on that because I think my clients are sensitive to the labor rate. You think your clients are sensitive to a $65 an hour AV technician when they pay $180 an hour to have a plumber come to their house, right? So that's something we taught ourselves, and then we taught our customers that that was a fair price. So when I tell a young business owner who somebody taught him this model of you add up all the equipment rental rates and you add some labor to it and you sell it to the customer, you make all your money off of equipment because that's rental think. I say reverse it. You own all that equipment, right? Yes, I own all that equipment. Great. It's now free. You now make all of your money on labor and services. What are the labor and services worth for you to deliver this sound system, this video package, these screens, these lights to this customer? Go backwards. Who cares what the equipment rental is? What is the job actually worth to deliver?
But is it really real that a lot of that equipment is free? Because I feel like in order to stay top of like the latest equipment, you constantly have to invest, right? Like, let's just talk about LED screen. To replace all your projectors or your fast fold screens, you have to put a lot of money up front to go into the future direction, right? These screens. And there's a lot of companies that carry very, very fat loans to support that, right? So now you're thinking, I got to be able to pay my loan. I cannot discount this equipment. Yes, labor, pricing, all of that. Like, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, Aka, you know what we call those companies? Rental companies. Right? The fact of the matter is how much you paid for that equipment, what you owe on it, doesn't matter one bit to the customer.
Right.
All that matters to them is what am I going to get for my budget? Not what math that you use to decide how to use my budget, right? Because I'm sorry, I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of companies. AV math is wrong. You don't want to know. It's almost as bad as meeting planner math, right? You don't want to look in there and see what's really going on. So we have to understand what value is. It's the cost of your goods and services. If you have to subrent, if you have to buy a unique thing, that's a cost for this job. It's the hard costs plus the margin that it's worth. So I have hard costs for equipment. Okay. I have hard costs for talent that I put on the team. I have hard costs for travel and expenses and trucking. and I put margin on each one of those. That's the math.
Oh.
Not I take my equipment price and I discount it until the client says, okay, guess I'll pay you.
Right. So from all those different business models, and I'm sure going behind the hood on some of those practices that you've seen, what is a common margin then for AV production companies to keep as their like maybe North Star, if you may?
Well, it's a good question, but it's a difficult question because everybody measures margin differently. But if we use the classic accounting model, I've got an MBA, so I have opinions about this. And we say it's all of the costs incurred because you sold something, and those are your direct costs. Okay? Making 50% margin might be reasonable for your company, but it also depends on what your overhead is. What's the quality of work that you do? So if your overhead is all of the people on your team are making $250,000 a year and could work at any company in the world, okay, I need to make a higher margin on that event. I can't afford that 50% margin. I might need 60 or 70% margin. So how do I keep my costs down?
I see a problem there because I think a lot of the companies that end up hiring these young kids out of school with very little experience that don't necessarily charge your regular experience AV tech rate is because they're struggling with their margin. And now it's this loopy loop that you're like, how do I get out of this? Because I can't afford to pay more experienced labor. My margin is still like, it feels like it's a math problem.
Well, it's a math problem, but there are examples of what I would call predatory buying. There are certain event production agencies that move from small company to small company, finding people who are just good enough to really want this business, and they work them and they squeeze them and they pay them late until that company fires them, then they go find another supplier. So we can count ourselves lucky sometimes when we find a company who undervalues themselves or a freelancer who's not charging enough for their talent. And we go, okay, I'll hire you this time. But if you're really good, I'm going to tell you to raise your rates because I want you to be available for me rather than, ooh, I got lucky. I found this person who doesn't know what they're worth. I'm going to keep using them until they find out, and then they're going to resent me. So your rising tide lifts all boats. I need to pay people what they're worth. And if they're not worth it, I probably shouldn't hire them.
And then going back to the margin, be able to have enough of a good margin to be able to afford to pay people what they're worth.
Right. Yeah. There are small markets that get some very big events. There's some nice convention centers and cities with 200,000 people in them. Well, there's not a giant freelance AV pool there. If you need to have a full service crew in that city, you're going to have to bring people in from out of town. There's travel costs involved, right? There's per diems, there's hotels, there's all sorts of things involved. That's going to increase the cost. If you happen to, on that particular day, have enough people in town that you don't have to travel anyone in, are those people worth any less? And they're not worth any less.
Right.
Because you found and cultivated a team of people in your town and you saved money by not having to travel them in. If you do travel them in, it's not the client's problem. It's just the cost of me getting the team to your show. If I don't have to travel them in, that's my money that I earned. But buyers often want to know exactly how you're making their money and put it in their spreadsheet so they can go, we don't pay that much per diem. Well, guess what? I do. So it's a funny world.
It is, but I feel like it's also very much region based when it comes to pricing, like East Coast versus West Coast versus like middle of the road. Like I've freelanced quite a bit in my lifetime, and there's certain rates that you can charge on this side of the country versus if you're trying to negotiate the same rate on this other side, you're not going to get anywhere, or not even talking about local labor versus national. Where are we going? And Vegas versus Boise, like such a different fluctuation in rates. And it's hard to navigate sometimes, like even knowing where am I like on the map, who am I working with? And yes, it's important to have conversations, important to just straight up like ask, hey, what's the going rate over there? Like what is something that would make sense, right?
Right. And remember, in different parts of the company, there are different cost bases. I mean, rents are higher in some places for businesses as well as freelance talent, right? The cost of labor can be different. Living expenses can be different. There's so many things that can affect differences in states. Taxes Okay. How a company runs their business also affects it. Some people run their business with a lot of overhead and they're not very good with money. So they find they have to charge more to get by. Other companies are extremely efficient, have very talented people who can do a lot of work, okay, eat more easily. They're better value. I tell a story. I spent a lot of time in marketing. And I had a young man, very brilliant young guy doing graphics for me for a year, doing my presentations. And he was charging me 50, 60 bucks an hour. And I thought that was fine. His work was good. He was very responsive. But I didn't realize that it took him 4 times as long to do the work because he didn't have that much experience. My next graphics person was somebody who was probably 25 years his senior, and she charged $45 an hour, and she did the work in a quarter of the time. And it was better work. So it's not just what something costs, it's what is it actually worth. Okay. When people hire me to help them with their companies, they go, "Why, Tom, are you so expensive?" It's because I spent 40 years to figure out how to fix your company.
Right. It's like there's that story about this engineer going to fix this engine that only he worked on for like his entire lifetime. And when he retires, the production stops because something breaks. And they bring him back in and they ask him, "Okay, so how much does it cost for you to fix this? Because you really know this machine." And he gives like random, like $1,000 an hour. And they're like, "What? Why does it cost so much? Because we used to pay you, I don't know, $100 an hour, right?" And he's like, "Well, it's actually $100, but 900 is all that experience that I have put into learning this machine that I'm the only one that actually knows how to fix."
Yeah. And going back to value, there's a lot of value that we have in our companies that is worth something. But if we don't understand what it is, how are we going to convey it to that buyer?
I think this is such a big one because, like, even as a business owner, but also as a freelancer, like being able to really quantify in your own head what is the value that I bring to this event, to this project, to this, whatever that might be, and sticking to your guns and just, this is what I'm worth. I think it comes with experience, but also comes with years. I don't remember having a lot of confidence in the beginning in my own skill set, even though I was really good at what I was doing. But to be able to be strict and say, "I know what I'm worth," it was very challenging. And I think it just took years to be able to stand the ground and say, "Well, you know what? I know that I can do it better, faster, or whatever," right? Like know the value that you bring and then be able to stick with that. And then if that doesn't work, well, guess what? You can find someone else.
Right.
Find me when you need me.
Well, I mean, how do you want to spend your day? You want to spend your day being respected by the people that hired you for your talent and your expertise and letting you use it? Or do you want people who are going to question your talent and expertise all day long? There's just some people I don't want to work for. And even the youngest or most inexperienced freelancer has a price that is too low, but they also have a quality of experience that's too low. I may work for this person for $15 an hour, but I would never work for that person for that little. So value, again, is also what is it worth to you?
Right. To just get off the couch.
Well,
to do the job.
And you know what? You've taken gigs because you wanted to do that gig.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great show. That's a great event. I want that position. Yeah. I'll make myself worth that, worth more later. Right now, I just want that on my CV.
I've also declined gigs because I'm like, I don't want to work with these people ever again.
Yes. Isn't that the best feeling ever?
Yeah, sometimes it comes to that. Okay, so let's move into the future of what the event production business model could look like, because you've seen quite a bit in your lifetime and you've seen it evolve over the years. Where do you see it going into, say, the next 5 years? Let's not even talk the next 10 years because that sounds like forever. The next 5 years, especially as we're looking at AI playing a bigger role in increasing automations, data analytics, event personalization. I was just having a conversation earlier today with the owner of a company that they switch all their video cameras to AI driven cameras, like for tagging, for following, for switching. And I was like, oh my gosh, your mind gets blown because AV as an industry has been slower at adopting innovations just because you still need gear, you still need people, you still need trucks, you still need all of this, right? But the way the future and the technology is moving, it's really going to replace a lot of that cameraman here, lighting designer there, like a lot of the talent in our industry in one way or another. And that can be very scary, right? So I'm curious, like, as you see this shift happening, because I'm pretty sure you're feeling it too. And a lot of probably AV production owners are feeling it too. How do you see it change? Like, how do you see it needing to change the business model?
When I first started doing keynote speeches, my original keynote was, the most important trend that matters is that technology is always going to get easier to apply, right? So if new technology becomes easier to apply, the next question is, does it also do something valuable for us? Does it do something more, or did it just make our life easier? Right? Because I could put a camera and an operator on there, and I can have a person with a computer tagging and doing all of these things. I can find very expensive ways to get that done. And if it's valuable to the customer, they will pay for that. I can do it easier with AI. Can I do it better? Right? And is that what the client's willing to pay for? Are they willing to pay for what the difference is? Because if AI does it better, it should be worth more. If AI only does it more easily and you can accept the mistakes that it's going to make, okay, then it's a better value, but I'm not going to pay more for it. So how do we apply those things? I've watched technology change dramatically, particularly in the professional broadcast video world, where our camera chains cost $300,000 in the 90s. And now a camera that does basically the same thing 10 times better is $9,500.
Right.
So is that better? Does it change the value of what it's doing? Does it change all the things that have to go around it to make it work? Does it change the quality of the talent that you have operating it? So I think we have to pay attention to, if technology is innovative, is it something that the customer needs or appreciates, or do we just think it's cool? And if technology innovation happens too fast, we as businesses, we cannot keep up with it. We will lose. Back in the 1990s, video projectors were literally advancing 5 times every 6 months.
Like the lumens that they were adding.
Oh, the lumens, the resolution, the color reproduction, everything got better every 6 months. And if you wanted to stay cutting edge, you had to buy a new set of video projectors every 6 or 12 months.
Right.
Right? It almost killed us.
Yeah.
Right? So you can't keep up with everything unless it dramatically increases. And there became a point in time where video projectors were not getting better enough to justify the extra cost, and that client having to pay for all the other video projectors I own that are now obsolete that I'm still trying to pay for.
They're on the shelf somewhere.
Right? So we've overinvested. So I tell people, let innovation happen. It's okay to lag innovation. Don't lag on knowledge. If you need that innovation, there's somebody who has it that you can bring into your event.
Yeah.
You don't have to own it until it makes business sense to own it.
That's a good piece of advice right there.
You're welcome.
I mean, it applies not just to AV production in general, but in general to business owners, that I feel like there's this breakneck speed to try to embrace all the tools, like all the AI there is out there. And that's something that I talk in my AI talks. Like, it's not about using all the tools. It's actually looking inwards at some of the tools that you have and seeing what you can optimize. What are some of the processes that you already have? Like, I was giving this talk on AI at a event planning agency and large agency, and they're like, how can we optimize the processes? How can we make everything more efficient and all the things, right? Everybody wants to be more efficient. And as I'm looking through their tech stack, they use Microsoft Office tools. There's a lot of apps that you can use within the Microsoft Enterprise account. They were literally using 10% of that. And there's so many apps and part of that enterprise account that you could use to optimize what you already have. Like, you don't have to throw AI into the mix. Like, start using what you have at its capacity. And you're going to see efficiency right there just by using maybe Power Automate and automate some of the tasks everybody's doing every single day. Little things like that. And that's why it's a great piece of advice, because you're going to run yourself into the ground trying to stay ahead of what the innovation and changes are happening. But I like your point, like stay ahead in the knowledge, like don't lag behind. You need to know what's going on. It's just you don't have to necessarily throw money at it just to fix a problem that you don't even have potentially.
Right. And you may be in a position to advise the client that, yeah, that's a really cool innovation, but you don't need it. You don't need the extra expense. Like you said, you're not using all the features that you have now. Why would we add all these extra features?
Exactly.
So sometimes we have to be good advisors for our customers. So again, our responsibility is to spend their budget wisely.
Absolutely. As we're wrapping this conversation up, Tom, and if you were to give one piece of advice to most of the companies struggling out there in this paradigm, what would that piece of advice be? What would be something that you would advise them to embrace or to change or whatever it is that you're thinking to leave them with?
I will tell them that they won't be able to do it at the beginning because it'll take a while for them to believe this. But the advice I will always give them is hire the best people they can find. Don't just hire people because they have a lot of experience in your industry, because that often doesn't work out. Hire good people. And they can be from other industries. And guess what? They're going to be expensive. So if you're worried about what someone's going to cost rather than what's the value of the person you have the opportunity to hire, you're going to miss a chance to grow your business and have a huge impact.
Now, on that, let me piggyback on a quick question, because I've heard this said a whole lot of times, especially in AV production. We hire for attitude. We don't hire for skill set. Would you hire for a skill set over attitude, or would you hire for attitude over skill set if you were to choose?
Attitude, but I also say aptitude. Their ability to adapt and learn what they already know is very important in our industry. Having a good attitude about it, awesome, right? Okay. Being able to continually get better and make people around you better, that's what we're actually looking for. There are lots of people who can just do the job and smile, right? We've got to go beyond that.
Attitude and aptitude. I like it. Well, Tom, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed this. Thank you so much for your thoughtful questions.
Absolutely. Well, where can our audience connect with you, learn more about Stimson Group and the work that you do? Where do you hang?
Where do I hang? And I will talk to anybody who just wants to chat about the industry. I enjoy it. I have a lot of history to share and thoughts just about everything. But you can find me at tom@trstimson.com. I'm sure I have all sorts of social media tags as well. I don't know what they are.
If you Google Tim, I'm pretty sure you're going to find Tom Stimson.
If you get on LinkedIn and look for Tom Stimson, you'll find me.
I promise you there's only one. I did that. I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation. Tom, I appreciate all the things that you've shared with us. And if there's one thing that I feel like you really, really try to drill in, and if you're listening all the way till the end, I hope it really got drilled into your mindset. You need to prove value beyond everything. Find a way to prove value, and then everything else will come easier. Did I summarize that well? Is there anything else to add?
Prove value to yourself first, and then it all becomes easier.
I love it. Well, that's it, friends, for today's episode. If you found this conversation valuable, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your network. They need to hear about this conversation. And until next time, well, keep innovating, keep elevating, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in events, and prove value to yourself first and foremost, and then to your clients. Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate the time that we had today.
You're welcome. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with other professionals like yourself. If you're interested in learning more about TreeFan events, including our future AI education talks and workshops, or to see how we can support your next event, book a free 20-minute consultation through the link in the episode notes. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and social media for updates on future episodes, industry insights, AI news and tips, and more. And if you have any topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out.